So AWS CloudTrail, go ahead and watch that introduction video. And when you're ready, you can continue on ours. So CloudTrail is another service similar to CloudWatch, but in this sense, CloudTrail is all about having a record of account activity. So it's not so much about triggering actions. It's more about just having a full log of all the activity in all your services. So this can help with governance, compliance, operational, and risk auditing of your account. So if you want to go see how your service has been doing, right? The requests, right? Anything about the history of who's been using your services as well, right? That's all going to be under CloudTrail. So because everything in AWS is an API call, when you start up an instance, you're sending an API call. When you stop an instance, you're sending an API call. When you create an alarm or set up an S3 bucket, every click of the button on that AWS dashboard is an API call. Of course, if you use command line interface or scripting, that'll also be API calls as well. So with CloudTrail, you can view a complete history of all those API calls and, of course, also user activity, who logged in, who was using what service. Extremely useful, right, when you want to keep an eye on the status of your different services. So this recorded information will have anything from the identity, again, the user who actually made that API call, who clicked on one of those dashboard buttons, the time that they did it, and even their IP address, which can be extremely useful, right, when it comes down to security, right? You don't want any unknown entities actually using your cloud services. So think of CloudTrail as a trail of breadcrumbs or a log of actions that someone has left behind. So how it works essentially is CloudTrail will record all the API calls and user activity. All those events are actually stored in an S3 bucket. So it's relying on another service to actually store that data. And then features like CloudTrail Insights, which we'll talk about in another slide, can even help you analyze strange behavior, right? Unusual behavior patterns. You can integrate it with CloudWatch for real-time monitoring as well. So let's take a look at another example. This time in the context of CloudWatch and our coffee shop. So suppose that the coffee shop owner is browsing through the AWS IAM section, right, of the AWS console. And they discover that a new user, Mary, was created, but they don't know who, when, or how they created that user, by what method, right? So to answer these questions, of course, the best way to identify, right, the culprit of this strange behavior is going to be CloudTrail. So what happened? Well, CloudTrail is going to show us that a new IAM user was created. It's going to show us that John was the one who made that API call, the one that clicked the button. It'll show us when it occurred, and they'll show us how they did it, right? Because remember, Management Console is just one way to provision AWS. Again, you can do it through software development kits. You can do it through scripts, right? Through the AWS CLI. A few different ways to actually interact with AWS cloud services. So yeah, in the CloudTrail event history, the owner applies a filter to display the events for the create user API action. So we're just going to get a list or a log of just the time somebody tried to create a user in IAM. They'll locate the event for the API call that created an IAM user for Mary. And then this event provides complete details about what occurred, just like we saw here in this little graphic. So yeah, AWS CloudTrail will help you keep track of everything that everyone did on AWS. So Insights is a feature of CloudTrail, and this is going to help you identify strange behavior, right? Unusual operational activity. So this is a great security feature, right? It can help you secure your services, secure your users, make sure that nothing suspicious is happening, right? So this optional feature for CloudTrail is used to automatically detect unusual API activities. Again, remember, everything you do in the cloud is actually just an API call. You're sending kind of like a message to AWS Cloud and say, hey, start up the instance. Hey, make me an S3 bucket. Whatever the case may be, we're doing it through API calls. So for example, CloudTrail Insights might detect a high number of EC2 instances, higher than usual. that have been recently launched. So CloudTrail Insights can give you the full event details and give you some actions that you can take, right? Maybe shut down some of those instances, but maybe you check with your organization. It was a legitimate, right? Activity, so you kind of just leave it alone. But yeah, CloudTrail going to help you identify those strange API calls.